dream about the sea. I was a lighthouse, you were calling to me.
So now we come to track 9, which is Myrrh. And this is the narrative turning point in the Song of Solomon. And it's the moment when she says, yes, I'm in. I'll go my way to the mountain of Myrrh. I will do hard things, right? So Song 3, he says, you can do hard things, because early on, chapter 1, she said, draw me away. And then he did. And she was like, oh gosh, I didn't maybe mean like that. And so she stays back. She stays in her comfortable comfort zone with, whatever, fill in the blank. What things has the Lord invited you to that you're like, that would cost me to say yes to that, and I don't know if I want to. And it's not always like, leave that sinful thing behind. That's a no-brainer. But when the Lord draws you into maturity, sometimes it's just incremental or giant steps to whatever, like, I have a weird story. So sometimes it's looked like moving to Iraq during the ISIS years that I was super not stoked about. Or buy a gift for somebody who's aggravating you, because it'll uproot the resentment in your own heart and bless them and foster a move in the opposite spirit of what's brewing, and can be conducive to a really beautiful friendship, or just a faithful witness to what Jesus is like. I'm struggling for language here because I have a few. I didn't read that in a book. When I was in college, the Lord had me get cereal for a coworker to put in her locker, who was just aggravating all of us, and she was just so blessed by it and just encouraged, and it killed something in me. I felt it die. So sometimes that's the mountain of Myrrh for you. Sometimes it's hills, valleys, mountains, whatever, like big and small. The Lord wants to conform you into the image of Jesus, and that's the restoration of the fall, really, that we bore his image. If you want to take the metaphor of the fall in Genesis 3, if we bear his image, we're like walking mirrors, and those mirrors fell and were shattered, and now he is repairing them. So you will be conformed into the image of Jesus. And using language in the Song of Solomon, I think in chapter 4 or 5, she says, come north wind, come south wind, blow upon my garden, that its fragrance would come forth, that my beloved could come into his garden and eat its fruit. Like, the whole point is for you to mature and to bear fruit, and come hell or high water, come winds of adversity, come comfort, whatever, I am yours, and my life will bear fruit that gives you glory. And I'm with you in it. We're fellowshipping. We're in a deep and abiding relationship. John 15, abide in the vine. All of those things. But it starts with her saying, okay, I'm in. I will go my way to the mountain of Myrrh, and her way might not be your way. My way to the mountain of Myrrh is different than yours. Yours is different than mine. We all have our stories with the Lord. We all have our journeys, and all of them matter to Jesus. They're all significant. They're all, So don't compare yourself to somebody else. Just look to Jesus, the author and finisher of your faith. Anyway, so in this song, the way that I wrote it was that she has a dream that she did not go her way to the mountain of Myrrh. So I had a dream about the sea. I was a lighthouse. You were calling to me. But I was living in retreat, hiding from Poseidon's fury. Because again, at the end of the Song of Solomon, chapter 8, it says, many waters cannot quench love. So the motif of water is all of this adversity that will try to keep you from wholeheartedness with the Lord. I saw the last sands of time, when the unprepared will beg the wise. I reached for my lamp to light to look for oil, but I found the fool in mine. So this is leaning on Matthew 25. There's a parable of 10 virgins, and they all are waiting for the bridegroom, and they sleep. They have their lamps, and as they're sleeping, as they're waiting, their oil runs out, but 5 of them have oil to replenish it, and 5 of them don't. They were the foolish ones. And they, in the end, it's a harsh parable, but they ultimately do not go into the wedding feast. They're outside and there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. It's harsh. So you don't want to be a fool. You want to get oil. But wisdom will be justified by what she bears over her life. So break my leg, my name decide, that I'll emerge unrecognized. Luke 7:35, wisdom is justified by her children. Jesus is saying this in response to a conversation about John the Baptist, And he says, look, this generation, what do I liken this generation to? It's like children in the street calling to each other saying, we played the flute for you and you didn't dance. We played the dirge and you didn't mourn. We're pulling out all the stops. You have John the Baptist, you have the Word incarnate, and you are not responding appropriately. Matthew 16 says, read the skies. You have the Word, get in the Word, so that you can discern what the Lord is doing in the hour, in your lifetime, and respond appropriately. But often, I think that proverb, wisdom will be justified by her children, is significant because good things take time. And often, when you're in a watershed and you can go one way or the other, often wisdom looks stupid, it looks foolish. And the foolish thing that ultimately you will regret doing looks very attractive and shiny. It's not a law, but often. So walk with discernment. And in Genesis 32, Jacob wrestles with the man through the night, walks away with a limp and a new name, and he is no longer called deceiver, but contended with God and prevailed. But God is triumphant. And he then begins an era in his life where he becomes the father to the fathers, right? The 12 tribes of Israel. In Song 8:5, this is kind of the end of Song of Solomon, as she's gone her way to the mountain of Myrrh, she's done, ministry with the Lord, fellowshiped with him in difficult things, and then they emerge from the wilderness, and everybody who had watched the early part of her journey said, wait, who's this coming up out of the wilderness, leaning on her beloved? His ambition for you is that you would lean upon your beloved, that you would lean upon him, and if that means that you have to wrestle with him, and he has to break your leg to change your name, so be it. So the song continues, the water came in slow, great the fall, my tower buckled, I let my love grow cold as accusations plundered all my hope. We've quoted the end of the Sermon on the Mount in an earlier video, Matthew 7, the Lord says that if you hear my word and you obey it, it's like building your house on the rock. But if you hear my word and you don't obey it, it's like building your house on sand. And when storms come, when adversity comes, when north winds blow, your house will fall if it's built on sand. But if you obey and it's built on the rock, you're sweet. It'll withstand the storm. You cannot mature if you do not withstand the storms. And we know in Matthew 24:12, because lawlessness will abound, as we approach the day of the Lord, the love of many will grow cold. Because we are all being pressed into the question of whether or not God has really said. And hope deferred makes the heart sick, but when desire comes, it's a tree of life. You are responsible for your own heart. The Lord is a good shepherd, and ultimately he is your caretaker, but you are responsible for your heart. This is why it's important to stay the course when it's hard, when he feels far, when you're offended. Ideally, we will become unoffendable, because if we allow accusations to arise in our hearts against the Lord, and these are foxes and weeds, if we do not catch the foxes and uproot the weeds, accusations will plunder your hope. And so, Peter takes it really far and he says, people will scoff and say, yeah, but where's the promise of his coming? Because they've been saying this since the fathers fell asleep. Enoch, Noah were stewarding this message, and where is the seed who's going to crush the head of the serpent? It's just business as usual. But Peter says, yeah, but a day to the Lord is like 1,000 years. 1,000 years is like a day. He's not slack. He didn't forget concerning his promises. He will keep all of his promises. So Paul would say, press in and press on to know Christ and the power of his resurrection and fellowship with him in his suffering so that you might know him, because he is the prize. And you can't get the prize if you don't get to the finish line. And then she says, but mine will be a vessel shattered, every drop poured over my lover. We are 2 Corinthians 4, Philippians 2, we are treasure in earthen vessels. And Paul says, if I'm being poured out as a drink offering on the sacrifice and service of your faith, he's speaking to the Philippians, I'm glad and I rejoice with you. But ultimately, when Mary of Bethany anointed Jesus with the oil and her costly oil, like her inheritance, her life security, she shatters the alabaster, pours it all over him. He is dripping with her offering, and she anointed him for his burial. I think that he would have smelled like her oil and her offering for days. He would have smelled like her oil on the cross. So when they whipped him and lashed him and beat him up, that's what would have come off of his skin. And Jeff Henderson said to me once, I think he smells like that still, which I think would be beautiful because it was so significant to the Lord. Her offering was holy to the Lord. And so is yours. He is not unjust to forget even the smallest thing that you have done in service of him in his name. You can give somebody a cup of cold water in his name and he will remember it forever. The simplest things, the simplest yeses. And then it ends, she's saying, I'll never again retreat from the Gethsemane in which you're leading me to Golgotha unto death, for you will triumph over all defeat. Jesus is not the only one who will go the way to Gethsemane and Golgotha, because the kingdom of heaven is like a father preparing a wedding for his son, and he will not be married unequally yoked. He will marry a suitable helpmate. This is why Genesis 2 was a whisper and a foreshadow. Behold, I tell you a mystery. I'm actually speaking of Christ and his bride. You will be conformed to the image of Jesus, right? Like Ephesians 5, it's a mystery, but equally yoked or bust, because many will come and say to him, Lord, Lord, didn't I do all these cool things in your name? And he'll go, I never knew you. We don't want that. We want to know him. And he says in Matthew 10, Mark 8, Luke 9, he who does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. We have to walk that path, and Jesus is out to kill you. You will walk your path with your cross into Gethsemane, into Golgotha, and the body of Jesus will do that corporately. The nation of Israel will do that corporately. We will all go through the fire of the day of the Lord, so that when he comes, we are ready. And then as we close, we quote Adoniram Judson, who served in Burma for decades. It was a hard slog. It says, in spite of sorrow, loss, or pain, our course be onward still. We sow on Burma's barren plain, we reap on Zion's hill. Maranatha.